Welcome, Karl-Heinz. We're just going to have a conversation about the very unique work that you do. And the first thing I think that would be good to understand is what exactly is a symptom constellation when you talk about that? And how is that different from a family constellation or an organizational constellation or something more usual?
Well, basically there are two things very different. And one thing is that in the symptom constellation, I cover more than the family of origin and more as the present family. Because you have the four realms of maybe unresolved trauma in your energy field. And those four realms are family of origin. And this means that the trauma was not happening in your life so far. It happened to another person in your family of origin, normally of a former generation, parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. And so they experienced the trauma or they caused the trauma to other people. So this is also possible. So this is, and this is like, if in symptom constellations, I always look towards the symptom, towards the disease, or whether it's mental or whether it's physical, or just a life problem, like relational problem, or a child has a problem. And whatever the problem is, the issue is, there's always a reason for that. And this is most of the time, it is unresolved trauma. And like more than half of that, like more than 50%, is coming from the family of origin. So the unresolved trauma happened where you go in the family of origin. So this is then if you do constellate on this, then you call that family constellation. And there is also a second realm, and this is what I call, what we also call present family. This is the family you are founding in this life. That means all your important love partners, married or not, are part of the present family, plus, of course, all your children, the dead and the living. So also the aborted, miscarried children are part of the present family. And of course, there can also be unresolved trauma causing some problems in the actual situation. But present family is also covered with classic family constellation work, of course. But then the third one is not so often in a family constellation, and the third realm is a personal trauma. So you have the possibility that you experienced a trauma yourself personally in this life, like childhood, youth, or later. And some of those traumata you don't even remember if you're too young, like birth traumata, or as a baby, you don't remember it, or even later you forgot about it if it was serious. And then it still could be there and cause problems today as the consequences of unresolved trauma. And so this is also looked at in a symptom constellation, because we just try to find the energetic cause for whatever is the problem. And so this is the third realm. And then there's an important fourth realm, which is not covered by a classic family constellation. And this is also personal trauma, but it is personal trauma not in this life, in a former life. And this is fairly frequent. I guess that like 35% of my clients who come to me and want to have a constellation on, they show this energetic background. So it's frequent. In whatever problem there is a good chance that it could be also this unresolved trauma in a former incarnation. And in symptom constellation, I integrate all this into one constellation by doing a so-called 4-column test in the first phase of the symptom constellation. And I can test, first I have the client in the constellation, then I have the symptom of the disease, and then very important also a possible message of the symptom, or the possible message of the disease. And then if I have those three and got the information, what they have to say. Then the next thing is, where is it coming from? Where is the unresolved trauma? Where is the original trauma? And then I do a test. This is for 3 minutes, and then I know it is from family of origin. Is it from present family? Is it from personal trauma in this life, or is it from personal trauma in that life? So this is one of the main differences between what I call symptom constellation towards like classic family constellation. But more than half of my symptom constellations end up to be then, family constellation. It has to be because the reason is in family of origin. So it is a combination.
Right. So it sounds like you're very active in the constellation. Is the person is the client that you're seeing active in the constellation as well?
Well, it depends whether it's in a group, and the group is whether the group is there. This is what is a group therapy to begin with in the beginning, and you can have a group in presence. Now with COVID, we have many groups online, but still there is a group, so the group members they can be the representatives. Of course, in the constellation, especially if we are present in a room. So that's what I do also. So I'm not so active representing there, but in the individual therapy, when I'm just with a client or with a couple, I do all the representative work. That means I put papers on the floor as placeholders. That every position has a paper on the floor with a name on it and also an arrow, so that we know which direction they are looking. Then I do all the representative work, and the client just sees that and hears that. And then, of course, we have a conversation about it. But I go in every position, one after the other, and gather the information out of the informational field. And sometimes there are 20 or 30 positions in that room. So it's a lot of work, but basically it's also fast. But then, you have new positions, then you have to go through all the others again, what has changed. So, but, after a few decades now, you can do that, and it's good work, and it can be done online worldwide, which is wonderful. So everybody can have individual therapy with me, and you, if you're a facilitator, you can also do that online if you're ready and skilled to do all the representative work in the individual.
Right. Great. Yeah, that's very understandable. So when you get into the solution phase of the constellation, you have a very unique approach that you've developed and you use now.
Yes, this started already very early in my journey, more than 20 years ago. I got to know shamanic energetic healing work, and for several years I just used that for single therapy, just somebody laying on the couch, and I apply shamanic healing powers as a medium, as a channel for them. And like 7 or 8 years ago, I started to combine this shamanic healing method, which I call healing voices, because the sounds and the voice is very prominent and important there, to combine it with symptom constellations. And even constellations with business constellations sometimes, and not in every constellation, but I guess like 90 to 95% today in my symptom constellations, there comes a point where we switch to the shamanic healing powers and ask them and invite them to bring more healing towards the system.
Right. Okay. Very interesting. So you developed the healing voices as they came to you, but you didn't seek them out, did you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole story to that. normally, I mean, that was what I was reading in the books about shamanism all the way through. Before I had this experience, I thought, and you can read it today, that normally the shaman chooses the student. And so you cannot decide, you know, I want to be a shaman now. That's not the way how it used to be, you know, in the old traditions. So when I had the first contact with that, and this was in an Indian and indigenous sweat lodge. I'm a sweat lodge leader, and I used the sweat lodges also for training of people who wanted to learn how to do systemic constellation work, because you are in contact with some invisible energy if you facilitate a constellation, and the sweat lodges are a great experience to get closer to invisible energy. And so in this one, I just had some voices coming through me, and the people in this special sweat lodge had some strong healing experiences. And after that, they asked me, what was that? And I said, well, I don't know. But somehow I was a medium for obviously healing powers. And then after that, I didn't want to follow that, because I was not, you know, learning that from an old experienced shaman. I was just, I didn't consider myself a shaman. This is now 20 years ago. And it took me several years till I found out that I have to do that work. And I found out through getting very sick myself, because I was refusing to do that. I just did it sometimes with family members, and it always worked, but I didn't do it in my practice. I didn't apply that to my patients and clients. But after I got very sick, in the depth of that sickness, I understood, okay, too bad, you know, if I'm sick, and maybe my neighbor knows how to heal with this healing energies, and he just doesn't dare to do it. So I understood I have to, I'm not allowed to really hold that back. And so I said, okay, if I get healthy again, I will put it in front of my website. I will do that in my practice. Okay, somebody wants me, but this is not. Okay, sorry.
Someone wants you on the phone. My cat wants me on he likes listening to things about shamans.
Yes, and well, what it is, you know, now I can talk about it a little bit with more seriousness, because I have the experience with that for so long. What it is, you can imagine that the shamanic healing powers of healing voices, they are everywhere, in the air around us all the time, and also in us. They're just there. But for some reason, they cannot be effective by themselves. If they would, everything would be good all the time. For some reason, it should not be like this. We humans have to make it, to go through a development of our personality and our consciousness. So to understand and know about those healing powers, and that they are there all the time, is already a widening of our consciousness. And well, so they need two prerequisites that they can be effective. And one is a total yes of the client, that he or she says, yes, I want that, I open up for that. If you don't want that, they cannot work, they would not work. So they respect the free will of us humans. And the second thing is, and I cannot explain why that is, but obviously they need a second prerequisite, and this is they need a human being who is willing and able to be a medium for them, a channel for them. And this I do then, this part I take over and do this in the constellations. That means in the end of the constellation, when we already know everything, how it's all connected, for example, if there is war trauma with victims, murdered people, and the perpetrators are there, and also we already know how that it connects, for example, to the family of origin, whether it's the grandfather or the great grandfather or whoever is connected to that trauma. If we know all this, and we have, by knowing, it is already starting a healing movement, because consciousness is important there, to know about it, to see the connections. But most of the time, this is not enough to get a high level of healing. And then, because the trauma is basically still unsolved. That means the souls of the victims, the souls of the people who really experienced that, they're often still in the trauma freeze and have the horror and the anxiety and the pain or the sadness or the grief still there. It's still there. And this does not change by us knowing about the connections. But the shamanic healing powers, they can often start a healing movement also on the soul level of the people who experienced the trauma way back. And then this is then the moment when I suggest to the client that we ask and invite shamanic healing powers with healing voices. And of course, explain that in detail what that is. And then if they say yes, I do that. And what the shamanic healing powers then do is, to stay with the example of now a war crime. They, first of all, they work with the perpetrators, with the aggression and the negative powers of the perpetrators, and destroy this power. So the perpetrators are destroyed and disempowered if they are too narrow, linked to the negative energy there. And if they just have a loose connection, it could be that the healing powers, that they can separate this this perpetrator from that negative energy, and then the perpetrators show like, they open up their heart, somehow they get human again, and then they see, all of a sudden, they see what they did, and then they break down. They don't have to leave the system, obviously they break down, but they're there and they get into deep regrets and cry bitterly about their deeds in front of the victims. And this is also a healing movement there. And then those healing powers work also with the souls of the victims and help them out of the trauma freeze, which is very touching if you see that. And there could be 3 or 4 or maybe hundreds of victims in the field, and they work with all of them. And this is liberating for the descendant of maybe the perpetrator or the descendant of the victims, because then they see that they are liberated from the trauma, and there is no burden to be carried anymore. So this is what healing voices do, and other things which would be too much now to explain. This is a whole long story, but with the shamanic healing powers, there is a higher level of healing can be reached. And right. If you never experienced that, you'd be astonished that what's possible there.
Right. Yes, I found over the years that I've explained constellations a lot, but all of my explanations fall away when someone actually has a personal experience, attends a workshop, sees someone else's work, and then the explanations are much clearer after they have an actual physical experience.
Yeah, that's also true with healing voices, of course.
Right. Right.
This is nothing you can understand how they work. It's just, I mean, if you work as a medium for them, you understand somehow. You have an idea what they do, but right. You have to be a medium for them. You have to be clear that you are not the one who's healing. You are just the tool. if you think you're doing it, you lose it. They
Right.
will not accept you as a channel if you think you're the big guy there. You're not.
Right.